Poem 1.1 Television. This is a very humorous poem, but with an important message. Stop children from watching too much TV and introduce them to the magical world of books and reading. The most important thing we have learned so far as children are concerned is never, never, never let them near your television set. Or better still, just don't install the idiotic thing at all. The poet says that the most important thing is never to let the children go close to a television set. In fact, it would be better if the parents didn't install such an idiotic invention in their homes. In almost every house, we have watched them gaping at the screen. They loll and slop and lounge about and stare until their eyes pop out. Last week, in someone's place, we saw a dozen eyeballs on the floor. The poet says, in every house we go to, we have observed children staring open-mouthed at the screen. They laze, they relax, and keep on staring with eyes wide open. The poet humorously says that the previous week they had seen a dozen eyeballs on the floor in somebody's house. They sit and stare and stare and sit until they are hypnotized by it, until they are absolutely drunk with all that shocking, ghastly junk. The children full time just sit and stare until they are quite hypnotized by what is going on the television screen. They seem absolutely drunk with all the terrible low quality programs that they watch on TV. Oh yes, we know it keeps them still. They don't climb out the window sill. They never fight or kick or punch. They leave you free to cook the lunch and wash the dishes in the sink. But did you ever stop to think, to wonder just exactly what this does to your beloved tot? All parents know that the TV keeps the children still. They don't climb out of the window. They don't fight with each other. They are so occupied because of the TV programs that the parents get free time. In that free time, the parents can cook the lunch, wash the dishes, and do whatever they want. However, the poet asks the parents whether they ever stop to think exactly what effect the TV is having on their dear kids. It rots the sense in the head. It kills imagination dead. It clogs and clutters up the mind. It makes child so dull and blind he can no longer understand a fantasy, a fairyland. His brain becomes as soft as cheese. His powers of thinking rust and freeze. He cannot think, he only sees. The poet further claims that the television destroys the sense of the children and kills their imagination. The minds of the children are filled with lot of nonsense things and they don't have thinking power. The children become so dull and blind that they don't understand what is fantasy or what is a fairyland. The brain of the child becomes as weak and soft as cheese. His powers of thinking are completely paralyzed and the only things he can do is to see. All right, you will cry, all right, you will say. But if we take the set away, what shall we do to entertain our darling children? Please explain. The poet says, I know that all parents agree with me. But after that they ask me the most important question, what they shall do to entertain their dear kids if they take out the set away. We shall answer this by asking you, what use the darling ones to do? How used they keep themselves contented before this monster was invented? But then the poet replies by asking the parents what their beloved children used to do and how they used to keep themselves satisfied before this television set, which is a monster, was invented. Have you forgotten? Don't you know? We shall say it very loud and slow. They used to read. They would read and read and read and read and then proceed to read some more. Great Scott, gadzooks! One half their lives was reading books. The nursery shelves held books galore. Books cluttered up the nursery floor. And in the bedroom by the bed, more books were waiting to be read. The poet says that in the past, children used to read a variety of books. They used to spend half of their lives reading books. The nursery shelves held large number of books. Also in the bedroom, there were always more books waiting to be read. Such wondrous, fine, fantastic tales of dragons, gypsies, queens and whales and treasure isles and distant shores where smugglers rowed with muffled oars and pirates wearing purple pants and sailing ships and elephants and cannibals crouching round the pot stirring away at something hot. It smells so good. What can it be? Good gracious, it's Penelope. The books that the poet is talking about contain fine, fantastic stories of dragons, gypsies, queens, whales, etc. They describe the treasures on islands and distant shores where smugglers row their boats, and the stories are about pirates who wear gaudy clothes and about elephants. There are stories of cannibals, means those who eat human flesh, and also about Penelope, which is a faithful wife of Odysseus from a Greek mythological tale. The younger ones had Patrick Potter with Mr. Todd the Dirty Rotter and Squirrel Nutkin, Pigling Bland, and Mrs. Tiggy Winkle, and just how the camel got his hump and how the monkey lost his rump, and Mr. Toad and bless my soul, there is Mr. Rat and Mr. Mole. Oh, books! What books! They used to know, those children living long ago. The poet mentions a variety of books. So please, oh please, we beg, we pray, go throw your TV set away and in its place you can install a lovely bookshelf on the wall. Then fill the shelves with lots of books, ignoring all the dirty looks, the screams and yells, the bites and kicks, and children hitting you with sticks. The poet pleads with parents to throw away the TV set and to install in its place a lovely bookshelf on the wall. He tells the parents to fill the shelves with lots of books and to ignore the dirty looks given by the children when the parents install these bookshelves, because initially the children won't like this activity. He also tells the parents to ignore the screams, the yells, the bites of the children. Fear not, because we promise you that in about a week or two of having nothing else to do, they will now begin to feel the need of having something to read. And once they start, oh boy, oh boy. The poet is sure that the children won't show their tantrums for a long time and they will start looking at the books and finally reading the books. You watch the slowly growing joy that fills their hearts. They will grow so keen, they will wonder what they had ever seen in that ridiculous machine, that nauseating, foul, unclean, repulsive television screen. And later, each and every kid will love you more for what you did. So, the poet is sure that the minds of the children will become so sharp that the children will begin to wonder why they were so crazy about the television set. And then they will realize that it was a totally unpleasant invention. Finally, the children will love their parents more for what they did. Now read the stanza and answer the questions. Oh yes, we know it keeps them still. They don't climb out the window sill. They never fight or kick or punch. They leave you free to cook the lunch and wash the dishes in the sink. Now the question, what are the activities avoided by children while watching TV? While watching TV, children avoid mischievous activities like climbing out of the window. They also remain away from fighting and kicking or punching. Now explain the figure of speech in they never fight or kick or punch. It is tautology. Refer to the same activity of fighting and they are used in the same line. It is also repetition as the word or is repeated for musical effect. Next one. Read the poem and complete the words. The first letter is shown here. This is what you watch when you switch on the TV. S. Screen. This is what we walk on. F. Floor. This is where dishes are washed. S. Sink. You often do this in the kitchen. C. Cook. An act of fighting with the fist. P. Punch. You do this with your books. R. Read. A room where you sleep. B. Bedroom. Now discuss the two sides of watching TV as presented in the poem and write them down. Advantages and disadvantages. The first advantage, children forget to climb the window sill. Then, the TV keeps the children still. 3. The children never fight or kick or punch. 4. They leave the mother free to cook the lunch and wash the dishes in the sink. Now the disadvantages. It rots the senses of the head. It kills the imagination. It clutters up the mind. It makes children dull and blind. The child cannot think, it only sees. .2 The tie that does not bind. This is a description of an incident of purchasing a tie for a friend. Once, the writer had been asked by a friend to bring back a vaccine for a horse. Another time, he was asked to bring back a special brand of ceramic paint. On the trip mentioned in this story, the writer was asked by a friend named Gilson to bring back a tie with a small embroidered G. On the day the writer arrived, he didn't have time to think about the tie, but strolling around on Sunday, he saw some ties bearing various letters in one shop window. They were cheap, just $1, but all the shops were closed. On Monday, the writer didn't get the time. Then it was Tuesday morning, time to leave. And it was only when he saw his airport bus waiting outside the hotel and he remembered about the tie. Then he told the group to go on and he went in search of a nearby shop where he had seen the ties, but he couldn't find it. Then he came back at the hotel, took his suitcase, got a taxi and asked the driver to rush to the street where he had seen the tie shop. But the store had all sorts of ties, but not the kind he was looking for. Then he rushed to another shop and got the same tie. He was very happy, but he was not having the change. And therefore he grabbed 10 ties of different colors so he wouldn't have to wait for change. Then he rushed out with the ties in a paper bag. He settled down inside the taxi and reached the airport. He paid the taxi driver the double fare and grabbed his suitcase. The plane was ready to take off and departure had been delayed because of the writer. And after making him comfortable, he searched for the paper bag and, oh my God, he had left it behind in the taxi. Now, develop a dialogue in between Sabino, the writer, and his fellow passenger in the plane. Hello, I'm Sabino. I'm sorry I kept all of you waiting. It's okay, but what kept you so long? Oh, nothing much. My friend Gilson wanted a tie with the letter G embroidered on it. So I was searching for that. Oh, I think it was very important, but it is very silly. Yeah, but I didn't want to disappoint my friend. Then how did you manage to get it? I took a taxi and promised the driver double fare if he would wait. Then I picked up 10 ties of different colors with the letter G on them. Well, at least you got what you wanted. That's a relief. Yes, really, I'm very happy. Please show me what you have purchased for your friend. Yes, surely. Oh my God, what is it? After all that trouble and hurry and worry, I left the ties in the taxi. Oh no, what shall I tell Gilson now? Now read the passage and answer the questions. Oh, so you are going abroad. Can you bring me back? I have been asked to bring back a vaccine for a horse. Once, I searched the suburbs of Paris for 2 days for a special brand of ceramic paint. Having spent a lot of money for Cartier lighter refills, I had them confiscated at the airport just before boarding because the gas might be dangerous in the air. Now, 2 months before a trip, I stop talking to people so they won't suspect I am about to travel. But someone always catches me. I have heard you are going to New York and I want you to get something for me. It's just a little thing you can find anywhere. I don't know exactly how much it cost, but it shouldn't be much. We shall settle up when you get back. What Gilson asked me to buy was, in fact, a little thing, a tie. But not just any tie. He wanted a tie with a small embroidered G. Any color would do as long as it had its initial. Look, this is a special flight, I explained. We are only staying Saturday through Tuesday. Now the question, complete the following. The Qatar lighter refills were confiscated at the airport because ... The gas might be dangerous in the air. The writer was staying in New York from ... Saturday through Tuesday. What did Gilson want the writer to bring for him? Gilson wanted the writer to bring him a tie of any color with a small embroidered G. Next one. What things had the writer's friends asked him to bring back from his various trips abroad? Once the writer had been asked by a friend to bring back a vaccine for a horse. Another time, he was asked to bring back a special brand of ceramic paint. Once, he had asked to bring back Cartier lighter refills. And on the trip mentioned in this story, the writer was asked by a friend to bring back a tie with a small embroidered G. Next, strolling around on Sunday, I did see ties bearing various letters. When I was strolling around on Sunday, I did see ties bearing various letters. It shouldn't be much. Add a question tag. It shouldn't be much, should it? Next, if your friend were going abroad, what special thing would you ask him to bring back for you? If my friend were going abroad, I would definitely ask him to get me various chocolates because I like the chocolates very much. Lesson 1.3. The night the ghost got in. This is a comic story. The members of a family one night thought that a ghost or some burglars had entered their house, and each one reacted to the situation in different funny way. At that late hour of the night, the writer was trying to find out what was the cause of the sounds in the dining room. At first he thought it was his father or his brother Roy who were out but were expected home at any time. Next, he thought it was a burglar. The writer's brother Herman heard the steps circling the dining room table like a man running. Then the sounds started up the stairs towards the place where Herman and his brother, the writer, were standing. They saw nothing coming but only heard the steps. This alarmed Herman to such an extent that he rushed to his room and slammed the door. The slamming of the doors awakened Mother. She peered out of her room and demanded to know what the boys were doing. Not receiving a proper answer from either of them, she assumed that burglars had entered the house. This made her excited. She then decided to call the police. However, the phone was downstairs, so she picked up a shoe and whammed it through a pane of glass across the narrow space that separated her house from the house of a neighbor. The neighbor, Mr. Bodwell, was very angry when he was woken up. He came to the window, shook his fist at Mother and shouted at her. When he finally realized that Mother was telling him that there were burglars in her house, he picked up the extension phone by his bed and called the police. Once the police were inside the house, they were all over the place. They opened the doors and drawers, they shot up the windows and made a thorough investigation of the place. By this time, the grandfather, who was in the attic, had concluded that the policemen were deserters from the army. So he roared at them and gave one cop a smack alongside his head that sent him sprawling. Then grandfather grabbed a gun from the holster of one of the cops and let fly. Smoke filled the attic and one cop was shot in the shoulder. Finally, the cops left the house reluctantly. Now read the passage and answer the questions. It was now about 2 o'clock of a moonless night. Clouds hung black and low. Bodwell was at the window in a minute, shouting, frothing a little, shaking his fist. "We shall sell the house and go back to Peoria," we could hear Mrs. Bodwell saying. It was some time before Mother got through to Bodwell. "Burglars!" she shouted. "Burglars in the house!" Herman and I hadn't dared to tell her that it was not burglars but ghosts, for she was even more afraid of ghosts than of burglars. Bodwell at first thought that she meant there were burglars in his house, but finally he quieted down and called the police for us over an extension phone by his bed. After he had disappeared from the window, Mother suddenly made as if to throw another shoe, not because there was further need of it, but, as she later explained, because the thrill of heaving a shoe through a window glass had enormously taken her fancy. I prevented her. Now the questions. Fill in the blanks. Mr. Bodwell had originally come from the city named ... Peoria. Why was Mrs. Bodwell talking about selling the house? Mrs. Bodwell started talking about selling the house because she did not want to stay in a neighborhood where there were unnecessary disturbances late at night. What were Bodwell's reactions when he was woken up? When Mr. Bodwell was woken up, he was very angry. He came to the window, shook his fist at Mother and shouted at her. Then finally he realized that Mother was telling him something, that is, there were burglars in her house, not in his house. Then he picked up the extension phone by his bed and called the police. Next, we shall sell the house and go back to Peoria. Rewrite using after. After we sell the house, we shall go back to Peoria. Next, do you think it was right to call the police for such a silly incident? No, it was not at all right to call the police for such a silly incident. The family should have thoroughly investigated source of the sound first, and then only they should have called the police, because they all were knowing that all the family members are not the simple one, but they are very abnormal.